Happy Friday and welcome to another episode of BrainScratch. I'm your host, John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. Before we get started on today's case, wanted to let you guys know of a couple things going on with the projects around here. Seriously Mysterious, the new podcast, is coming very soon, and I've decided to do something a little special for that. You want to make sure that you're subscribed to this channel and that you've got the notifications turned on. That's that little bell icon that's down by the subscribe button. When I'm recording new episodes of Seriously Mysterious, I think I'm just going to do those as a live stream, but it's a live stream that's going to disappear. Essentially, you have to catch it live. You can hang out with me. I'll be chatting for a little bit before we get to the recording session. Then we'll chat a little bit after it about the case that was just read. So you could be part of that. But once that recording session happens, once it concludes, that video disappears forever. However, of course, if you want to listen to the episode, you can check out the Seriously Mysterious podcast. If you want to follow that, you can go to seriouslymysterious.com for options on that. So that's coming up, and I just wanted to give you a little heads up on it because those kind of secret recording sessions going to be starting pretty soon, and I'd really love for some of you guys to show up there. So I hope that you'll join in on that. Also, a quick reminder, the cases nowadays, 90% of them are coming from the suggestions site at BrainScratchers. I have a link in the description box below. So if you guys have cases that you want me to cover, be sure to use that link. Be sure to get it in there because 100% of the stuff that's going in there is being reviewed by me personally. And from that, cases are being picked, just like today's case, to be featured on the channel. So if you have a case that you want to bring to my attention, hit that link in the description box below. Go to brainscratchers.com to the Suggest a Case page, and you can get it from there. I've also got a link at lordenarts.com to get you to the Suggest a Page. So Suggest a Case page, if I could spit it out, page as well. I got to tell you guys, you know, there was an original feeling that I had about BrainScratch when I started it, and it was really looking into some of the cases where they were just so mysterious, so hard to understand. And I know as the channel has kind of migrated more to true crime, that some of that doesn't happen quite as often. They're tough cases to find, essentially. But every now and then, as I'm going through your suggestions, I bump into one and it hits that old criteria. It kind of lights that old fire inside of me. And this case not only hits that, but it also motivates me because I believe there's a very good chance that this family deserves justice. And I don't know if they're going to get that without this case being talked about and exposure being raised to it. There's so much going on with this case. Just when you get through one article and you kind of feel like, okay, I think I got a handle on this, all of a sudden new information comes out, and then new information comes out. So buckle up and let's go through this together. This is a case that starts with a body being discovered on a beach. And this story comes all the way to us from the UK. And important to note here, the body has actually been moved by the time this photo has been taken. It was discovered by some people that were walking their dogs. One of them was a police officer who was actually off duty. They discovered the body, I believe, at the water line. And of course, that raises questions right off the bat of, you know, did he die on the beach? Did he die somewhere else and then got in the water and was carried to this spot? And of course, we're going to go into all kinds of different analysis on that. But then we have this really tough challenge in terms of identifying who is essentially a John Doe at the point that he is found, because he's not wearing any clothes. Only his socks and one shoe are on him. Now, as they start searching the local area, they do find a jacket. And in that jacket, they find a wallet, but there's no identification in the wallet. There's just a picture of a little boy. And you can see this has certainly taken some years before this discovery. How do they put this together? How do we figure out who this is? And then how do we figure out what happened to him? That's what we're looking at on today's BrainScratch. Let's start at BBC.com. Naked body may have come from boat. And this article is from March 2014. The discovery of the body was actually made on December 25th, 2014, around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And of course, they're highlighting that same photo. It seems to be the best means of trying to identify him when this case first hits the media. The corpse found on Perranporth Beach on Tuesday, wearing only a pair of socks and one shoe, has yet to be identified. Cornwall police said the possibility he was on a boat in the area was one of many possible lines of inquiry. Now, as they kept searching the beach, they found some other objects as well, including this backpack, which they're noting it's dark green and it has, it's got dark green ribbing. You can kind of see it on the bottom and on the side here, and a black, or you might consider it charcoal panel on the back. There was also a woolly hat that was found on the beach at that time. And initially, they're not really sure if this stuff is related to him or not. Or was it just something that was left at the beach by someone else? Of course, they've also got a photo of the shoe that he was wearing here. Let's continue over at The Guardian. Artist's impression released of a man who washed up dead on beach. So now we finally get a look at least what he looks like. And what I understand is this was essentially created from pictures of him deceased that the author then used to make this photo of him. So should be a very strong likeness. Detectives have released an artist's impression of a mystery man whose naked and badly injured body. Another interesting tidbit of information there. So obviously we're not just talking about a purely drowning victim. It seems like there's some injuries as well. Was found washed up on a beach in Cornwall. Officers are also looking for information about a black and white photograph of a small boy found in a wallet close to where the body's man was found. They do not yet know if the picture, which has the date April 13, 1952 on the reverse side, is connected to the man. The body, clothed only in socks and one walking shoe, was found at Perranporth on the North Cornish coast by a member of the public. Police said the man suffered multiple injuries and believe he had been in the sea for no more than 24 hours. Now, of course, knowing that he was only in the sea for that long, that's another reason to be able to lean a little bit more on this image, because obviously not a lot has happened in terms of deterioration with his body within a 24-hour period. Detective Chief Inspector, or as they're known out there, DCIs, Dave Thorne of Devon and Cornwall's Major Crime Investigation Team said, "We believe the artist's impression is a true likeness of the man we are trying to identify. As you can see from the image, he has some distinctive features, including a bushy white beard and white receding hair. It's been a week since his body was found on Perranporth Beach, and his identity is still a mystery. By releasing this image, we are hoping that someone will recognize him and come forward with his name, allowing us to progress with the investigation and bring us a step closer to finding out what has happened to him. He is someone's brother, father, uncle, or friend, and someone somewhere will be missing him." Police said that after a post-mortem, the man's death is being treated as suspicious. Injuries were found on the body that are not consistent with drowning and cannot easily be explained. Officers have released a series of photographs of items found on or near the body. These include the brown walking shoe that he wore, a black and white woolly hat, and rucksack or backpack were found on Perranporth Beach on the same day as the body. Perranporth is a small community that attracts a variety of people, and we are hoping someone will have seen something that could unlock this mystery. So let's just do a little bit of a diversion over to learn about Perranporth. Perranporth is a seaside resort town on the north coast of Cornwall, England, United Kingdom. It is 1 mile east of the St. Agnes Heritage coastline and around 8 miles southwest of Newquay. Perranporth and its 3-mile-long beach face the Atlantic Ocean. It has a population of just over 3,000 people. There's another little important fact that comes into relation just a little bit with this case. Surfing is popular in Perranporth with its long sands and beach break. The Perranporth Surf Life Saving Club is one of the oldest in the country and hosts an extreme triathlon every autumn. Here is what it looks like from the sky above. And I just want to show you a couple of key areas really quick. If we pull out just a little bit. So there's the St. Agnes Heritage Coast that the description was telling us about, and Newquay is up here. We can see it's just a very big, nice looking stretch of beach. We actually have multiple photos that have been taken down here just so you can get a bit of a sense of what it looks like. Looks like there's some construction that's going on at this point over there, but just a beautiful coastline. We do have some mountains and hills leading right up to it on that side. On this side, not quite as many that are pushing right up against the water, but of course the tide does come in and come out, so it depends on what time of day. And back here, there's a little bar that is kind of facing the beach. So let's continue with the details here. Cornwall Beach mystery man identified very quickly. They basically put that picture out, and I've actually heard two different estimations. One of them says that it was within 4 hours. BBC Crime Watch did coverage on this. They said it was actually within 1 hour, but very quickly people contact them and let them know, we think we know who that is. He was identified as 64-year-old Alan Gill from Wadebridge in North Cornwall after officers published an artist's impression of him. The body was found on the 25th of February. The artist's impression was published a week after. Callers, including family members, rang police, giving Geal's name after seeing the artist's impression. And that's just another nod to what a valuable tool these artists are doing in creating composites or digital recreations like this. Obviously, these things work. It really worked, really helped get this case moving very quickly. The investigation is now focusing on Geal's movements in the days before his body was found. A CCTV image has been released showing the last known sighting of Geal on the 24th of February, shortly after midday in Wadebridge Town Center, so basically close to his home. DCI Dave Thorne said, "Firstly, our thoughts are with Alan's family and friends at this upsetting time, and we will do everything we can to support them. Now that we know his identity, we can progress with the investigation and try to find out exactly what happened to him." Gill lived alone and was not reported missing to the police. So, of course, that makes it challenging to try to link that record up. I'm sure the first thing they did was say, okay, we've got a guy that looks like he's in his 60s, hit the missing persons reports and see if we can match this up. Obviously, they couldn't because he lives alone and no one had called it in. Now, just to get a little bit of a sense, here is Wadebridge where he lives, and here is Perranporth Beach, and it's about 25 miles between the two, so not exactly neighboring communities necessarily. Bit of a drive or ride to get there, and we're going to start putting the pieces of that journey together as well. And of course, that's going to open up some questions too. I did just want to take another bit of a diversion here to an article at bbc.com. I was so impressed with the work that was done on that image, and for that image to work so quickly. I just wanted to talk about who did that. His identity remained a mystery for days until an artist's impression of his face was published. Within 4 hours, it had led to the man being identified as 64-year-old Alan Gill. Forensic artist Terry Blythe, who created Mr. Geal's image, said success of this kind was the ultimate aim for people in her profession. And she's someone whose work you are probably familiar with. One of the biggest cases out of the UK is something she's worked on. Terry Blythe said the age progression of Madeleine McCann was her most high-profile case. Most of us in the true crime community certainly aware of that image, and we can only hope and pray that someday that image helps move that case forward as well. But let's get back to the one we're talking about today by continuing at the mirror.co.uk. And there are actually some other items that are found in the area, quite honestly, that I don't see the articles talking about at all, but here are pictures of them. So we know the photo of the little boy is found. We know one of the shoes is found. But there is also, it looks like a set of keys and some type of key fobs. Those are found. I'm not finding any reference to those whatsoever outside of being in this image. And then it also mentions a regatta jacket, wallet, and a photograph were also found on the beach. So essentially, from what I understand, the wallet was in the jacket, the photograph was in the wallet. But the regatta jacket turns into a bit of an interesting thing in itself. Let's go ahead and continue over at Daily Mail and look at some footage. So the CCTV footage that they found of him in his hometown is here on the left. So that is him on Monday, February 24th, just after noon in Wadebridge. The image on the right is a mannequin, but it's wearing the jacket. So what's interesting here, if you take a quick and easy look at this, obviously he's not wearing this jacket. He does appear to have some type of bag or something slung across his body. Is it that backpack? I'm not 100% sure, but it's pretty clear to me he's carrying something. So could he possibly have this jacket in there? Maybe, but that gets tricky too the more we look into this. And just right off the bat, it just makes me wonder, is this jacket really related to him, or is this the jacket of someone that might have done something to him? We know it's related to him in some way because his wallet's found in it. But if we have footage of him walking around town and he's not wearing that jacket, it had to come from somewhere. And then considering that his clothes are missing, but the jacket is found on the beach is another strange thing. If we do run down the theory that he somehow died and got into the water and the tides from the water removed his clothing, you would have to assume the jacket would be the first thing to go, or one of the first things to go. It would certainly go before his shirt. So where's his shirt? And I can tell from the photo I'm looking at here, he's wearing multiple layers. It looks like he's at least at a minimum got a long sleeve button up kind of plaid blue shirt, overshirt. Under that, it looks like he's got some form of t-shirt that's on under that as well. So how does the jacket wind up there, but the rest of the clothing doesn't? Now, I'm just going to put this out there because I'm just thinking about what are the possibilities here. I'm wondering, would someone have wanted to take his clothes for some reason? Perhaps they were worried about DNA that they left behind, or evidence, some type of traceable information that would link the crime back to them. On top of that, maybe there's something else at play here. Is it someone that might have needed his clothing? Is it someone that is kind of living on the rough and perhaps they came across his body and took his clothing? Maybe he was already deceased. There's a lot of different possibilities around this, but knowing that there's a jacket and it doesn't seem really connected to him directly starts opening up these questions. And I'm telling you guys, the questions certainly do not stop there. Once again, this article is noting they don't know if the backpack or the woolly hat are linked to him. And that's something else to point out. He's obviously not wearing that hat in this photo. Once again, could he be carrying it in the bag that he's slinging? Possibly. And this is taken around noon. We know he's not found until 2 o'clock the next day. That's a lot of time. Did he go home? Did he change clothes? I think we're going to be able to clean up some of that as we're going through the details today. But ultimately, here's another shot of the beach where he would be found. And if you thought this case was weird up to this point, things are about to get weirder. Here at The Guardian, sock found in mouth of body washed up on beach in Cornwall. There's a sock found in his mouth, but the description that we got about how his body is found, he's wearing his socks. So we're now talking about a third sock of some kind, and somehow it's found in his mouth. And is that even more of an indicator that there's some type of attack or something that has happened here? Police treating Alan Jeal's death as suspicious after postmortem finds injuries inconsistent with drowning. DCI Dave Thorne, senior investigating officer at Devon and Cornwall Police, said he could not explain why the sock was in Jeal's mouth. The officer added, "This is one of the reasons we're treating Alan's death as suspicious. Murder is one possibility we are considering. However, his death may have been caused by accident or perhaps he decided to end his own life." Detectives have released a map and a series of CCTV images showing a man believed to be Gill in the center of Truro the evening before his body was discovered. So now we've got a different town that's part of this. It is believed Gill, who lived alone in Wadebridge and was not reported missing, took the number 594 bus to Truro, arriving at the bus station at 6:14 p.m. He was seen walking towards the public toilets at the Leats and was last seen at 6:36 in Boscawen Street. Officers are trying to establish where Gill went after that and how he traveled to Perranporth. And here we have some CCTV footage, and there's something that strikes me right off the bat about this footage as well. Look at the jacket that he's wearing. This is not the same thing that he was wearing just after noon in his hometown, where his outer layer seemed to be kind of a blue plaid long sleeve shirt. As a matter of fact, let me bring that image back up. Here you go. Now we're seeing this image of what looks like some type of windbreaker that is solid blue. Once again, maybe he changed in between this, maybe he went home, or maybe he was carrying it in his backpack. But very clear to me that the clothing doesn't match. I'm also wondering, the pants look like they're dark gray, and here it kind of looks like he's wearing jeans. I can't really push very strong on that because of the quality of the images, but they seem to be a different color to me too. So kind of interesting that we have clothing changes that are happening around this. Speaking after his death, his family released a statement paying tribute to him. Alan was a mild-mannered, gentle man who was very interested in minerals, mining, and surfing. And that's part of the reason why I pointed it out earlier. We are shocked and deeply saddened that Alan's life has been cut short, and we are desperate for answers as to what happened. We appeal for anyone with information about Alan's life and last movements to contact police. And of course, as always, I have contact information in the description box below if you do have some information to help move this case forward. So sock in mouth, don't understand what that's about. Changing clothes in the video seems kind of strange, but might be explainable. But those clothes not being the same as what's found with him, that black jacket, really hard to understand. Let's continue with more at bbc.com. Now, there is something that comes out in April 2014, appeal to gay men on Alan Jeal death. Alan Gill, 64, was found naked and with a sock in his mouth on part of Perranporth Beach known as a gay cruising site. So what I gather from other articles I've read on this is there are some dunes that are nearby, just a little bit north of that bar that I showed you guys earlier. And supposedly that's like a kind of hookup area for gay men. Now, detectives are being very specific, at least according to this article. They have no evidence to say that Mr. Gill was gay, but they were appealing particularly to the gay community. They're also trying to trace missing bank cards and an iPod shuffle. So now we know we've got something that's considered valuable in terms of bank cards that are missing. And that makes me wonder, well, what's going on with his wallet? Was his ID in there also? And possibly the person that took his bank cards also took his ID. And his iPod shuffle is missing as well. A few items that maybe someone could use to get things for themselves or take the iPod shuffle to a pawn shop or something along those lines. Police said a jacket found nearby containing his wallet was not the one he was wearing in CCTV footage on the day before he died. So they're also being clear that jacket is not a match to any of the CCTV footage that they have of him. Officers had been in contact with Mr. Jeal's younger brother, Derek, who was clearly traumatized by the whole thing. Derek has given us some information about Alan's lifestyle and that he was quite a solitary character, he said. But unfortunately, it doesn't move us forward in finding out what happened on the evening that he disappeared. Continuing at itv.com, more footage. That's one thing that I have to say about the UK. They've got cameras seemingly everywhere in terms of public places. And whenever I'm looking into a case there, CCTV turns into a very strong investigative chain that they're able to follow. And this case is certainly no different. 3 months on, detectives are today renewing their appeal for information into the death of 64-year-old Alan Gill from Wadebridge. Alan's brother, Derek, says uncertainties surrounding Alan's death are making it difficult for the family to find closure. And of course, I can't imagine what they're going through trying to understand this. And then hearing conditions like that. I mean, if I was already feeling hurt about losing a family member, and then a week or a few weeks later, you hear of this other thing of, oh, by the way, there was a sock stuffed in his mouth. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty upset, and I'm really leaning towards who did this to my brother and how do we find justice for him. Here's a quote from Derek. Alan was a man who never really went far from Cornwall and someone who loved the outdoor life, particularly surfing, when he was younger. So with this new footage that is found, there is a new appeal. Detectives are now renewing their appeal to trace 3 people seen on CCTV at a Truro bus stop with Alan. Images show a man matching Alan Jeal's description talking to someone at a bus stop at 6:45 on Monday, the 24th of February at Lemon Key bus station in Truro. 2 other people were also waiting for the bus. So that's where we get this cluster of people here. The people seen at the bus stop have not come forward, maybe because they've not seen the original appeal. They could hold vital information about his plans for that evening. So admittedly, you've got one person he's seemingly talking to. Of course, you want to talk to that person. 2 other people that just happen to be there and they're kind of waiting for the bus. It's probably not a strong swing, but certainly worth looking into. You never know what one of them might have noticed or overheard. But they're having trouble finding these people. Continuing with another article at mirror.co.uk. Perranporth Beach death. Man found dead had pair of headphones hanging out of his mouth. I'm telling you guys, every article that we go into, it's like there's some other bizarre detail that comes out that just twists, like the last point that I was on. I don't get what this is about. His body was discovered with a rolled up sock and a set of headphones in his mouth. The white Apple iPhone or iPod style headphones with volume control were looped around the back of the sock and were trailing out of his mouth. A post-mortem examination found multiple injuries to Mr. Jeal's chest, head, and hand. He also suffered significant internal injuries, a flesh wound to his scalp, and bleeding hand injuries. Although there were some signs of possible drowning, it has not been confirmed as the cause of death. There's a lot to break down here. So first of all, I have no idea what's going on with these headphones, and hearing that they were kind of wrapped around the sock in some way, I'm not understanding what that is a mechanism for, unless possibly the sock was jammed into his mouth. The headphones were used to wrap around his head to keep the sock in his mouth. And then over the course of his body being in the water, somehow they became undone and were loose by the time that he was found. But now we also get some description on the injuries. We've got injuries to his chest, head, and hand. Makes you wonder, are we talking defensive wounds? That's typically, I don't know if they would describe that as hand. I guess it depends on the type of attack. Sometimes when people are attacked, if they're attacked by knife, you certainly would find defensive wounds, particularly on the hands. But also suffering significant internal injuries and a flesh wound to his scalp. There's a lot of damage that we're talking about to his body, particularly for a body that they're saying was only in the water for 24 hours. And now that we actually have a time frame of his travel that's going on, we know that it's more like 12 to 14 hours. So that's a lot of trauma to have happened to him. Although there were some signs of possible drowning, it has not been confirmed as the cause of death at this point. Mr. Jeal's sister, Linda Danielis, said she was desperate to know how her brother died and appealed for help from the public. Alan was frequently a watcher and reflective thinker and was not the sort of person people always noticed. The first thing that popped into my mind when I heard her say that is, I wonder if that would have made him more of a target for someone that was looking to do something. Like, even if it was just like a robbery gone wrong situation. Do you go after the person that's loud and boisterous? Probably not. Do you see someone quiet standing in a corner? Might be easier to get away with that. So I'm wondering if that part of his personality might have been a condition for him being targeted. He would have been the visible fly on the wall in the corner, said his sister. I was totally unprepared for his death and very shocked to hear about it. The fact that it is unexplained does not help me deal with the disbelief about what has happened. Clearly, I never said goodbye or gave him a final treat of any kind. If something happened at the end where he needed help and support, I was not there to help. It really breaks my heart to imagine what families are going through in situations like this. And looking into these cases, you hear about these considerations that you just wouldn't necessarily think about. And her sharing that really kind of opens up my mind to some of the other things that these really hard feelings are, and how these people live with those for the rest of their lives. I mean, when will that ever get resolved? Even if they find out, yes, he was attacked, yes, it was this guy, yes, we found him, yes, we put him in jail, she's always going to still have that feeling of, my brother needed help and I wasn't there to help him. That is a really, really tough thing. I want to wake up and think this is all a nightmare, but realize it is not, and there's no happy ending. More than anything, I want answers, realizing that there is nothing I can do to bring him back. The light blue raincoat Mr. Jeal was seen wearing in Truro the night before he was discovered has not been found. So that's another interesting thing. We've got some other mystery coat that shows up. His clothes are missing. His wallet is in this mystery coat, which already doesn't make sense. But the coat that they do have him wearing, hours before he goes into this water, regardless of what happened to him, that's missing as well. But we also hear some other things are missing. So in terms of the credit cards, it's a Barclays bank card, a Barclay card credit card, and also a cell phone, a Nokia 1110i mobile phone, and then a third generation iPod Shuffle, on top of the rest of the clothes that he was wearing, are all missing too. Police said Mr. Jeal had recently purchased a 10-kilogram weighted training vest and 2-kilogram ankle weights, but they have not been located either. So there's definitely, as I'm looking through these articles, I can tell some of the articles or the people presenting the information are really pushing towards, this is some kind of bizarre way that he decided to end his own life. And this is one of those facts that I think certainly nudges it towards that. So with a 10-kilogram vest and 2-kilogram ankle weights, would that really be enough if he was deciding to jump in the water? Would that keep him underwater? Based on some of the research I've looked into here, and I certainly don't want to share those sources, some people are saying, yeah, that would be, that's right around the point it would be enough. That essentially translates to about 30 pounds of additional weight. But then, of course, there's the logic of, well, what happened to these things? How does he wind up on the beach? His clothes missing? I mean, was he wearing the vests under all of his clothing? Is that the last thing to come off his body? And yeah, admittedly, in the ocean, you've got all kinds of different tides and different forces that are going on there. But when he shows up, one of his shoes are still on. So if he did have the ankle weights on, somehow that came off around the shoe. And of course, we don't know if we're talking Velcro, some type of easy removal system or something like that. There's a lot of different considerations here. And obviously law enforcement is curious. It seems like it's something kind of strange. They're saying his normal shopping pattern was like the occasional bottle of wine. And then all of a sudden from Amazon, he decides he's going to buy this kind of weight system. Detectives are trying to establish whether they were bought for him to wear or whether he bought them for another reason, such as a gift for someone else. And of course, there probably wasn't any easy indicator like, oh, he bought him in a small and obviously his shirt size is extra large or something like that. So it seems like they couldn't find a clear answer on that. DCI Dave Thorne, who's leading the inquiry, said 3 months on. And there are still some gaps in the information we have about Alan and his last movements. We're still treating his death as suspicious. DCI Thorne also adds, we believe he may have had a friend in Plymouth and another in Redruth and would like to speak to them as they may be able to provide crucial information and fill in some gaps. During the investigation, we have discovered that Alan was into online gaming, and detectives would also like to hear from anyone who interacted with him online. So even from those kind of notes, I'm kind of getting the sense that, yeah, they're treating it like it's a suspicious death. Yes, there might be a foul play element, but they're also staying open to the fact of, is this something that for some reason he might have done to himself? Over at BBC.com, we get more footage and look at him again here I'm pretty sure that that is that same kind of blue windbreaker. More CCTV footage has been released by police investigating the death of Alan Jeal in Cornwall. Police said they hoped the new pictures would jog someone's memory. Devon and Cornwall police said the footage showed Mr. Gill getting off a bus at Newquay bus station at 2016. He then walked around the town center before returning to the bus station at 2100 and catching the 2115 bus to Perranporth. So for some reason, it seems like we've got him traveling to a few different towns before he gets to Perranporth. And I don't know if that's because maybe there isn't a direct bus line that takes him there. But based on the map we're going to look at, it seems like he's overshooting Perranporth. He was also captured on CCTV in Perranporth between 2225 and 2227. So I'll show you guys what I'm talking about with the map here. Wadebridge, where he lives. He takes a bus from there, supposedly to Truro. Takes a bus from Truro, which kind of hoops down here, actually passes through Perranporth Beach, but he gets off it at Newquay, then walks around town for a minute, comes back, jumps another bus, and takes that bus back to Perranporth Beach. I'm almost wondering, like, did he miss the stop? Like, did he possibly fall asleep and then he wakes up and he's in the wrong town? And then, but it's kind of odd to me that we've got this bizarre travel. And like I said, I don't know the bus routes out here. I don't know if there was a direct way from Wadebridge to Perranporth, but he essentially overshoots Perranporth once, twice, and then on the third time he gets back there, unless he's stopping at these other places to do other things and we just don't know about it. Meeting up with people, something along those lines. The only real events that we get are at Wadebridge back earlier in that day. He does stop at an ATM and he pulls out 100 pounds. Stops at a store and I think he gets like a newspaper and some bandages, if I remember right. And then that's it. That's kind of all that we have for activity. The rest of it, they're really just they're tracking his traveling on the bus system. So let's get to BBC.com. Alan Gill death, Crime Watch features beach body probe. And if you guys are ever looking into a case and you see something about BBC Crime Watch covering it, please take the extra time to review it. I really wish that true crime in America would push towards what I'm seeing from shows like BBC Crime Watch. There's a different level of sensitivity and sensibility that I'm getting from those products that we don't get out here, particularly kind of our nightly news guys. And I don't want to beat up on that topic again too much, but just know the programs that I've seen from Crime Watch about the cases I've looked into, they've generally been excellent. And I just really appreciate that they're talking about it like it's real people. They're not talking about it like they're reading something from an encyclopedia. DCI Dave Thorne, who features in the program, said, "It has been 5 months since Alan's body was found, and there are still many unanswered questions in this case. We're hoping that this latest appeal will bring us new leads to help us solve the mystery and bring closure to the family." Officers have released new CCTV footage of Mr. Gill outside Bridge Tools in Wadebridge at about 16:45 on the 24th of February. He was wearing a light blue jacket, which has not been recovered. So there's an additional stop that we hear about. Unfortunately, despite how much I appreciate their show, later articles are saying that only 3 tips would be called in after that appearance. If you do want to see the Crime Watch Daily coverage, this article at Cornwall Live has it. So I'll keep this at the top of the sources list down below. Initially, police explored the possibility that the bearded stranger who was discovered by a dog walker had been murdered. The grim discovery sparked much speculation, including a theory that Mr. Gill died as a result of indulging in an act of autoeroticism, which involved putting the sock in his mouth. The mystery was later featured on the BBC's Crime Watch program, but police got no closer to solving the puzzle. Here's a picture of Alan as a young man. 6 months later, the trail went cold, with police announcing that they were winding down their inquiries, coming to the conclusion that the death was unexplained. For months, officers centered their investigation on Mr. Gill's movements on Monday, February 24th, 2014. And Cornwall Live put together basically a timeline I just want to run through with you guys. So their timeline starts in Wadebridge, Monday, February 24th, just after noon. They're saying he took an undisclosed amount of money from a Barclays cash machine. We know that that's 100 pounds that he withdraws from there. At 4:45, he's captured on camera again outside Bridge Tools, this time wearing a light blue raincoat, which has never been recovered, and carrying a rucksack on his back. And here's the footage from that. So once again, just the footage from here to here. Admittedly, we've got 4-hour difference, but he's definitely changed his clothes. Maybe he knows he's heading towards the beach and he wanted to wear something more appropriate. He's walking in the direction of the town center, most likely having left his apartment further up the road. It's believed he then caught the 594 bus to Truro. At 6:14, he arrives at Lemon Key bus station in Truro. 6:30, still wearing the same light blue jacket and the rucksack, he's seen walking towards the public toilets at the Leets. Police believe a man wearing shorts and a waterproof jacket may have seen him. So now we get another person they might be looking for. Mr. Gill is spotted walking in Boscawen Street. We can see he still has the kind of blue windbreaker there. This image does look like he's wearing jeans in that one. Where this one doesn't. They seem too dark for some reason. So I don't know if he might have changed his pants when he went to that stop. 6:45, he's seen talking to someone back at Lemon Key bus station. 2 other people are also waiting. That's the 3 people they were looking for. Despite numerous appeals, they never get in contact with those 3 people. I still think to this day, at least from the info that I've seen, they were never contacted by them. Here's another image of him at Truro bus station. 8:16 in Newquay, he's again captured on CCTV getting off at the town's bus station. They spot him walking around the town center, and then he returns to the Newquay bus station at about 9 p.m. Here, it's kind of tough to make out his clothing. 9:15, he catches the bus to Perranporth. 10:25 to 10:27, he's seen for the final time on CCTV. They capture him walking along Beach Road close to the spot where his body was found. Then, of course, 2 p.m. the next day, a female dog walker discovers Mr. Jeal's body on the sand outside the watering hole at high tide. That bar that I showed you is called the watering hole. He had suffered injuries to his chest, hand, and head, including a flesh wound to his scalp, as well as significant internal injuries. And we get a very interesting detail about the head injury. Police said the head injury could not have been caused by drowning or being flung against sand or rock by the sea. Now it's got me wondering if someone struck him like over the head and then pushed him over a railing or something like that. Of course, we've still got the mystery of the black jacket. Who did that belong to? How did his wallet wind up in it with his credit cards missing? His iPod shuffle. I guess if that was in his clothing and all that came off in the water, you might assume that his iPod got swept away, but kind of weird that his wallet is found and something that should be in his wallet, like the credit cards, isn't. I mean, it's really making it look like, and maybe it's 2 separate events. Maybe he died and then maybe someone found him and they took those things. I don't know. Though unemployed at the time of his death, he had worked in the electrical trade and in scientific research in the past. He lived a solitary life in Wadebridge, where he moved in 2004, rarely interacting with others. Mr. Gill had played squash to a high standard in local leagues and was also a member of the oyster catcher pool team. Other interests included sports cars, photography, beekeeping, mining, and mineral collecting. He read a vast amount of books and was a huge fan of science fiction and detectives, and also enjoyed computing, online gaming, and computer programming. At mirror.co.uk, if you think that we're done with all the strange discoveries, we're not. Mystery still surrounds death of naked man. A coroner recorded an open verdict after being unable to rule out suicide, an accident, or murder. So effectively in 2018, we get to an official inquest. A bunch of experts are pulled in and a lot of new information comes out. The 64-year-old's death sparked a large murder inquiry. The grim discovery sparked much speculation, including a theory that Mr. Gill died as a result of indulging in an act of autoeroticism, which involved putting the sock in his mouth. I wish I would find a better explanation on that in regards to this case. I don't know how we get to that conclusion. Yes, there's a sock in his mouth, and for some reason there's a cord for his headphones that's with that. And, my assumption is maybe that was wrapped around. I mean, is that really something someone would do to themselves? Maybe, but shouldn't there be some other indicators here before we really start pushing on that theory a bit too hard? Is it simply because he's found nude and in that way that we're thinking that's how he was found? I mean, it's so strange to me. How many of us out there are able to take off our pants without taking off our shoes? How are his pants missing? Maybe it's something along the assumptions about that where they're thinking he had disrobed himself and then put his shoes on and put a sock in it. It's just, I don't know, guys. I'm struggling with the logic around that. Dr. Amanda Jeffrey, a forensic pathologist who carried out the postmortem examination, said at the inquest she refused to rule out that scenario and said he suffered significant injuries to his chest, torso, spine, head, and brain. Dr. Jeffrey then addressed the unusual find of a sock in Mr. Geal's mouth. She added, the unusual aspect was the presence of a sock blocking the back of the throat with a set of headphones looped behind the sock. The sock was partly clenched between the teeth. Maybe is the headphone cord supposed to be like an escape mechanism that if, because they're saying that sock, it must have been pretty far back in his throat. And is he worried of it getting stuck there? So he's made this mechanism to be able to pull it out. But I still, why wouldn't you just reach for the sock itself? And why are you going to trust something I wouldn't trust, a headphone cord to take a whole lot of pressure. So I don't know if I buy that either. The sock matched socks found in his home. Really important consideration. So it seems like it's a sock of his own. It causes a degree of concern. It might be entirely innocent, but we simply cannot say. It's clear the sock was purposefully stuffed in his mouth. It would be a rather unusual thing to do to oneself. Thank you. I'm glad she's seeing the struggle that I'm having with this. I'm not aware of this being a recommended practice of taking your own life. It is possible the headphones were inadvertently dragged into the mouth at the same time the sock was inserted, so it would suggest the sock was inserted in a hurried manner. I'm kind of, I don't know. My assumption would be that it was used to wrap around his head to keep the sock in his mouth, but I think I'm kind of leaning more towards there's some type of foul play element that happened here. And if even in terms of the autoerotic thing, why are we assuming auto? What if it was some type of erotic component, but maybe there was someone else that was a part of that? I don't know. It's interesting to me that the focus is kind of going this way. While Dr. Jeffrey said she couldn't completely exclude a scenario where Mr. Gill suffered his injuries while lying in the water, she said they were much more likely to have been sustained as a result of a fall from a height. Now, interestingly, they show this photo of the beach, and we do have mountains leading right up to the water. And I kind of mentioned before, depending on when tide is swinging in or out, maybe it makes sense that there is a place that he could have fallen from. But I'm still kind of caught on, how do we know the difference between a fall? How do we know the difference of a push? Why do we have this strange situation with an object being stuffed in his mouth and possibly a securing device being stuffed in his mouth? Where is this jacket coming from that we can't explain? For me, there's a lot of indicators that either someone else is certainly there or someone else is part of this story in some way. He had a cut on the side of his mouth, and she could not rule out contact with a knife, although there were no other possible stab wounds. That's interesting too, because if you were using a cord as thin as, and I keep looking at my earphone cords, I'm wondering if someone did it too tightly or just pulled it around his mouth temporarily, if that could have caused possibly a cut, depending on his skin. Other features found significantly support drowning, including heavily waterlogged lungs. That's another thing that's kind of strange to me. I mean, admittedly, a sock isn't going to stop all liquid, but if the sock was jammed into his mouth, he stopped breathing at some point and then died, and then you put him in the water. And they're saying when they found the sock, it was pressed against the back of his throat. Yeah, it's not going to stop all the water from going into his lungs, but isn't it going to stop a significant amount of it? For them to call them waterlogged, I'd be curious to have better detail on that, just in terms of how much the lungs weighed and compared that to a typical drowning victim or something. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. Dr. Jeffrey concluded that Mr. Gill died as a result of drowning, in addition to the significant injuries suffered. Despite the fact that he had a sock stuffed in his throat, drowning is the cause of death. Bizarre. He died partially as a result of head and chest injuries, as well as the drowning process. It is possible that this represents a very unusual way of him ending his own life, although I cannot exclude the possibility that another person was involved in his death. An off-duty police officer was walking with his wife when they found Mr. Gill's body. It was located around 30 meters directly in front of the watering hole bar. In a statement, the officer said the couple initially saw a shape at the water's edge and joked that it looked like a body. Then his wife went over there and discovered it was. It was an adult male who had his face down in the sand. The incoming tide was washing up around the body. I could see a small amount of blood in the seawater next to the head. I noticed a cord hanging down the man's torso. Senior coroner for Cornwall, Dr. Emma Carlin, recorded an open verdict. I believe that means that they don't make a determination, that essentially the case just remains unresolved. She said, "I find it is not possible to exclude an intentional death, an accidental death, or the involvement of others." So it seems like the experts can't quite close the gap on this case with the information that they currently have. So remember, they said they have him walking on Beach Road. That's down here, just a little bit south of Perranporth Beach. We've got the watering hole here, and he's found about 30 meters in front of that, close to the water line. So somewhere right around here. Let's go ahead and jump. We've got some people that have taken photos out there. So I'm just trying to figure out places where he could have had a fall like that. And certainly the types of injuries that they're talking about happening to him internally kind of lead me to believe that as well. Especially with them saying damage to his head, his brain, his spine, really makes it seem like a headfirst fall. But from these locations, at least from this section of the beach, the hills seem like they're kind of too far away from the water. And I don't know how far in the water comes in when the tide pulls in. But if we look this direction to the south, we've certainly got some hills that look like that's more likely what could have happened if it was a fall of some kind, that it happened from this direction. And knowing that the last sighting that we have of him is on Beach Road, that is actually south. It could be that from here he came onto the beach, and I believe those hills that we were looking at are right about here. And I think you can see kind of how the coast is jagged here, that this is representing that there are cliffs that are close to that area. As a matter of fact, here, we can see that the cliffs are directly over the area here. So more information that came out through the inquest. They were told that neighbors of Mr. Jeal, who lived alone, heard raised voices in his flat on the day before his death. They heard a male person shouting, potentially on the phone, for several minutes at 12:50 p.m. before the front door slammed. So I think if we fit that in the timeline, he actually goes out first, does the ATM withdrawal, must have come home at that point, gets in a phone call where he's yelling at someone, maybe then packs up his bag or changes his clothing for heading out. But what is that phone call about? And how hard is it for police to trace that? I'm sure that they could check his phone records. Who was he talking to at 12:50 and try to tie that together? So I don't know if it's related to the case. I would think that they probably would have run that lead down and would have been all over that. His dark blue jacket with wallet containing 95 pounds and a 1950s photograph of Mr. Gill as a child was also discovered. So that's a huge and interesting tell. Money is still in his wallet. that is found in someone else's jacket, but his credit cards are taken. And by the way, those credit cards never get used. So that's telling me that the removal of the credit cards from his wallet is more about hiding his identity than actually trying to steal from him. I don't know if the same thing applies to the iPod, but considering we've got no identification, we've got credit cards that likely had his name printed on it removed, but we've got cash left behind. And the picture, I don't know. Maybe the person didn't realize that that was a picture of him. It's kind of strange to me that the picture would be left if you're trying to clean out someone's identity from a wallet and you see a personal photo like that. I would have taken the photo as well. So I'm kind of unsure about that. This article also notes his shoe was located in a cave. They're talking about the matching shoe, but we don't get any other detail. So we've got one shoe that's on him, jacket found with his wallet that doesn't belong to him, and his other shoe in some cave that's nearby. Did that happen from the water? Did the water push it up in there? Or did someone that was taking his stuff run there for a little bit? But why would they have taken one shoe? It doesn't make a lot of sense either, unless maybe there was something incriminating on it, but then you would have taken the shoe, like they left it behind. So that doesn't really hold up either. Dr. Jeffrey, once again, said Mr. Jeal's blood alcohol level was twice the legal drink drive limit. He had not taken drugs. So he had a bit to drink, and I'm curious about that because in all the tracking that they've done of him, they don't really have him winding up at a bar anywhere. They're not like, hey, we've got footage of him at this particular location. Maybe he was carrying something with him, but it does appear that he was drinking. There is nothing to suggest that he had been restrained against his will, Dr. Jeffrey said, which I find interesting when we've got this sock stuffed in his mouth and this cord. Now, believe it or not, the strangest thing still hasn't been discussed. And that's this next point over at Cornwall Live again. That backpack that they found, that they do think is his, officers found a bag full of dog feces inside of a rucksack, which was located close to Mr. Jeal's body and is likely to have been his. Mr. Gill did not own a dog. So this is probably likely an area where there's a lot of people that are walking their dog. And this is once again leading me to that thought of, did someone rip this guy off? Did someone take this stuff for some reason? Could someone have been walking their dog out there and took some of his things, but then left the bag that they had of dog feces that they were using to pick up after their dog on their walk? Or is this a sign of some kind? Is this some message or statement that's being made about him? I don't know. But it's the more I look at this case, the more bizarre it gets. And quite honestly, I feel like at the end of this episode, I'm more confused than at the start. Even though I've looked through all this information before, I'm trying to get a sense of which way my gut wants to go with saying what has happened here. And instead, my brain just gets blown. I don't know what to think about this. It feels to me like something very odd is going on here. It feels to me like there's someone else involved because we've got this jacket that has a personal effect of his, but I guess we could assume that he had that jacket in his bag. But then if he did, where does this other item, a guy that doesn't have a dog is collecting? I mean, possibly, if he's the type of person that cares about the environment and he's going out to a favorite beach of his from when he was younger and he wants to help clean it up, I guess maybe he could have been walking around picking it up and doing that. But then did something happen to him? Like there's still this other piece, this big mystery piece. And then we've got that phone call earlier in the day where he's upset with someone. I don't know, guys. This, like I told you at the start of this episode, some mysteries literally blow my mind, and this is one of them. Matthew Pavitt of HM Coast Guard explained where he believes Mr. Gill entered the water. And I'm telling you this version of it. I've seen a lot of others, and everyone keeps saying north, that nope, this expert is saying that he came in from the north. This quote actually says he's open to more than just that direction. And I'm not sure why so many articles are pointing it out that way. I think it's difficult to say exactly where he went in the water, Mr. Pavitt said, but I don't think it would have been further north than the Haven Holiday Camp, Perrin Sands, or further south than Droskin Point. And essentially, the area he's talking about is the same place that we were looking at on the map. And if we are talking about a fall of any kind that actually gets him in the water, that location further to the south certainly makes more sense. But there's still a story of what happened for that fall. How did he wind up in that position? Who was he going out there to see? I know there's other cases we've looked into, especially these kind of beach-related John Doe cases. And there is sometimes a bit of an easy assumption of, hey, this was an older person. They didn't want to be discovered. Along the way, they might have gotten rid of their ID. They might have, maybe he threw his bank cards away because he didn't want the person to know, but then he held onto a picture of himself as a kid. That's what I mean. We've seen other cases where it seems like sometimes older men will go somewhere to end their own life. Is that what we have happening in this case? I don't know, because there are so many strange details going on with this case. It's given me trouble in terms of trying to make sense out of it. And that's why I wanted to talk to you guys about it. And I'm hoping that you will include your thoughts in the comments down below so we can theorize on this together. And if there's someone out there has more key information on this case, please send it in. It's obvious this is unsolved. It's pretty obvious that the investigative leads haven't worked up to this point, and someone might have the information that really pushes this case in the right direction and brings some answers to this family. It is a very, very tough one in several regards. And I can't imagine just living with this for the rest of your life. You have this person in your family that you know and love, and you have to just make up a belief about what happened and just kind of hold on to that based on this type of story. Like, I don't know how you come to grips with that. So I really feel for the family here and hope that someday there is a definitive answer, regardless of whatever it is, just something to help them understand all this. I know this is a case that I will be thinking about for a long, long time to come. Before I end today's video, I want to thank several patrons, new patrons, starting with Marissa Hernandez, thank you, Eric Church, Joanna, Jennifer Simpson, and Gully. Thank you all for supporting me on Patreon. If you'd like to do the same, please visit lordandarts.com, where you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, or buy merchandise. All of it helps keep me here looking into these cases with you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, and I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked on the Lord and Arts channel.